Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. Today's project will be this wash basin pitcher bowl and stand. And as always, don't forget to check the link in the description that would take you to the Scavenger Hunt where you can find the list of materials and free printable pattern to make this wash stand for yourself. Okay, you ready? Let's go. The first thing we're going to do is cut out our pattern pieces. I know our patterns don't look the same, but usually I go through 3 or 4 different iterations before I settle on a final design. Usually this is what they start out as, or sometimes this. It just depends on how complex the piece is. Once we have all of our pattern pieces cut out, we can trace them onto our final material. I am using chipboard, so I am doubling up my layers using double-sided tape. Except for the piece labeled face, that one is just one layer. Another interesting thing that I've realized while using double-sided tape is that I don't have to process my chipboard, meaning I don't have to flip it over and sand the shiny outside coating off. You can take the shiny sides and stick them together. It doubles your layers and hides the writing. For the first few days after making this piece, I wasn't too sure that it really fit in with Madeline's style, but after thinking about the movie I realized that it wasn't so much about the furniture that was in the rooms, it was about what else was in the rooms, like all of the clocks, the prosthetic limbs, the interesting toys that I definitely want to make. The furniture was pretty plain for the time period, it's just the things that go in it. And with the added bonus of her being a midwife, doctor type person in the 1800s means there are so many different strange medical equipment that can come into this. Okay, back to what we were doing. After you have all of your layers doubled up, we need to take the bottom piece and make a trim around the edge. This is going to be our guideline to glue our feet on. And I'm using some wood beads that I've used on plenty of other pieces too. One of the reasons I like using beads for feet is because you don't have to worry about them not being the same size or the same height, so that way your furniture's not wobbling. Now we can glue the feet beads in place. While we're waiting for the feet to dry, we can move on to building the rest of the stand. You'll need the back piece and one of the sides. Okay, now we're going to install a top shelf. To make sure we're gluing the shelf in the right place, use the face piece and set it just below the very end of the back piece. Once you have it all lined up, remove the face piece and set it aside. Next is the other side wall. On a side note, silicone clay tools are really good at wiping away excess glue. Using the face as a guide again, we can put in the middle shelf. And next is the base or bottom shelf. And lastly, glue the face on. Let it completely dry before moving on to the next step. If you're happy with the way that it looks, we can move on to painting. I decided to go with a standard brown, but later on, after I'd made the pitcher and bowl, I decided I really didn't like the brown. So I put a coat of light tan over top. While we're waiting for the stand to dry, grab out your cold porcelain clay and we can move on to making the bowl and pitcher. We're going to start by making the bowl first, so we need to roll out our clay in a thin sheet, about 1/8 of an inch thick. Then using some sort of circle cutting tool, cut a circle that's about 2 inches across. Then carefully remove it from your plastic. You want to try to avoid stretching it at this point. Then lay your clay over some type of sphere. I'm using a soccer ball that's somewhat like an Easter egg. However, you do want to avoid print on the outside. The black spots from the soccer ball stuck to my clay, but I wasn't worried about it. I knew that could happen, and I was already going to paint over it. I just couldn't find the other half of the soccer ball because I had already sanded the paint off of it, just so I could use it with my clay. Once you have it centered over your shape, you can start to form it to it. But we need to be careful of creases because they could later turn into cracks. Keep lightly pressing the clay until it meets all the way up with the rim. To make sure we have a nice even rim, lay your cutting tool and your bowl upside down on the table and turn it in a circle until you've gone all the way around. And you don't have to use this specific cutting tool, a craft knife would work just as well. When you've gone completely around, carefully remove the excess clay. Now that we have the bowl piece finished, we can make the base. Start by rolling out a skinny snake of clay. Then add glue along the snake. Trim off the end to give it a nice clean cut. Then take your snake and coil it around the center of your bowl. Trim off the excess, then use glue to connect and shape your ends. Once you have the bottom shaped, lightly press it onto your table to make sure it's flat and sits straight. Now you can set it aside to dry and cure, and that can take anywhere from 3 days to a week depending on your climate, and I would leave it stuck to the mold for a good 24 hours. Now we can move on to making the pitcher. For this you'll need a rounded cylinder of some sort. I am using another silicone clay tool and a decent sized ball of clay. We're going to start by mashing the clay on the end of the handle and then slowly working our way up, while avoiding making creases. Once you're happy with the height, use lotion to smooth over any lumps and bumps. Then use your cutting tool and cut a straight rim. Now that our rim's all straight, we need to make the spout for the pitcher. I used a cone-shaped silicone tool for this, but you could use a pencil or a pen. Now that the jug's done, we can move on to making the handle. Start by rolling out a skinny snake of clay. Then trim off just a bit of one end. Decide where you want your handle to start and put a little dot of glue. Next, take your handle and lay the cut end into the glue, making sure that you're holding your handle straight up and down. Then use your tools to blend it in. Once you've got it completely blended, cut it to where it's about 1 inch long. Now you can decide on where you want your handle to come back and touch the body of the jug, and add a dab of glue. And there are a few different ways that you can connect this. You can make it look like it curls down, or you can make it curl up towards the handle. Then use your tools to blend it all in, just like we did the upper half. I decided not to put a stabilization ring on the bottom of mine. If you want to, you can go ahead and do so, just like we did for the bow. To give mine a flat bottom, I just lightly pressed it onto my craft table. And just like the bowl, it's good to give it 3 days to a week to completely cure and dry. But once it finally does, you can move on to painting. I decided to go with a light and dark green on mine. I started by painting the insides of both the pitcher and the bowl with the dark green. Then I painted the outside with a light green and came back later on to add dark green towards the bottom and blend it in the middle. Once it's completely dry, we can move on to adding stickers. I like the way the first set that I made for this house turned out, so I decided to add more wildflowers to this set too, only this time I'm going to be focusing more on blue. Once you have all of the nail stickers where you want them, cover both pieces with a layer of clear nail polish. This secures the nail stickers and gives it a look of glazed ceramics. And this is what they look like both finished. I did decorate both sides of the pictures, but I only got an up-close shot of the one side. To give the look of folded towels, I took a piece of fuzzy fabric, cut it down into strips, folded them, and then held them in place with double-sided tape. To make it look even more realistic, I took one strip and put a piece of double-sided tape on it, stuck it to the top of the table, then draped it over the edge, and held the other end down with another piece of double-sided tape. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hope this gives you some ideas for your next project. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for being here. If you're new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, as it really helps me out a lot. And for subscribers, please check and make sure that you're still subscribed. Our next project will be this armoire. Thank you, Ginger, and I'll see you next time.